Katharine Hepburn was once called the most maligned woman in Hollywood and labeled box office poison by theater owners across America. This might shock you because today we know her as one of the greatest actresses of all time, the only person to win 4 Academy Awards for Best Actress. But back in the 1930s, Hollywood and audiences absolutely hated her. They thought she was too weird, too independent, and frankly, too much trouble for what she was worth. Let me take you back to 1932. Katharine Hepburn had just arrived in Hollywood from Connecticut. She was 25 years old, came from money, and had this upper-class New England accent that immediately rubbed people the wrong way. Her very first movie was A Bill of Divorcement with John Barrymore, who was basically the biggest star in the world at that time. Right from the start, Hepburn was different. While other actresses were trying to be sweet and charming, she showed up to Hollywood wearing pants. This doesn't sound like a big deal today, but in 1932, women wearing pants was basically scandalous. The studio executives at RKO couldn't believe what they were seeing. But here's the thing, her first movie was actually a hit. People were curious about this strange new actress with the weird voice and attitude. So RKO signed her to a contract and thought they had found their next big star. They had no idea what was coming. The problem started almost immediately. Hepburn refused to play the Hollywood game. She wouldn't do publicity tours. She hated giving interviews. And when she did talk to reporters, she was often rude and dismissive. She once told a journalist, "I don't care what people think of me. That's their problem, not mine." This attitude was career-ending in 1930s Hollywood. The studio system controlled everything back then. If you wanted to be a star, you had to smile, be charming, and give the press what they wanted. You had to be likable. Hepburn refused to do any of that. But her personality problems were just the beginning. The real issue was that her movies kept flopping. After her successful debut, Hepburn made movie after movie that lost money. Christopher Strong in 1933 was a disaster. Morning Glory won her an Oscar, but hardly anyone went to see it. Little Women did okay, but then came Spitfire, The Little Minister, and Break of Hearts, all major flops. By 1936, Hepburn had starred in 4 consecutive movies that bombed at the box office. This wasn't just bad luck. Audiences genuinely didn't like her. They found her voice annoying, her personality grating, and her characters unlikable. She played these strong, independent women who talked back to men and refused to be traditional housewives. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, audiences wanted escapism and glamour. They didn't want to see some rich Connecticut girl telling them how to live their lives. Theater owners across the country started complaining to the studios. They were losing money every time they showed a Katharine Hepburn movie. People simply wouldn't buy tickets. The exhibitors, that's what they called movie theater owners, were furious that studios kept making movies with actors who couldn't sell tickets. The situation got so bad that RKO started having trouble finding theaters willing to show Hepburn's movies. Some theater owners flat out refused. They said she was poison to their business. Literally poison. Then came 1938, and everything exploded. The Independent Theater Owners Association, which represented thousands of movie theaters across America, took out a full-page ad in The Hollywood Reporter. This ad was like a declaration of war against certain Hollywood stars. The headline read, "Box Office Poison," and right there, listed along with other failing stars like Mae West and Greta Garbo, was Katharine Hepburn's name. The ad basically said these actors were killing the movie business and that studios needed to stop making movies with them. The ad said, and I'm quoting here, "Among these players, whose dramatic ability is unquestioned, but whose box office draw is nil, can be numbered Mae West, Edward Arnold, Garbo, Joan Crawford, Katharine Hepburn, and many, many others." They specifically mentioned that Hepburn had turned in excellent performances in Stage Door and Bringing Up Baby, but both pictures died at the box office. This was devastating. Within days, over 30 newspapers across the country had picked up the story. Box office poison became headline news. Katharine Hepburn went from being a struggling actress to being publicly humiliated on a national level. But why did people hate her so much? It wasn't just the box office failures. There were deeper reasons that had to do with who she was as a person and what she represented. First, there was her background. Hepburn came from serious money. Her father was a successful doctor. Her mother was a women's rights activist. They lived in a mansion in Connecticut. She went to exclusive schools and had never struggled financially. During the Great Depression, when most Americans were barely getting by, here was this privileged rich girl acting like she was better than everyone else. Her accent made it worse. That upper-class Connecticut way of speaking, it sounded like she was looking down on regular people, and maybe she was. Hepburn never tried to hide the fact that she thought she was smarter and more sophisticated than the average moviegoer. Then there was her attitude toward men. In an era when women were expected to be submissive and supportive, Hepburn played characters who argued with their male co-stars, who had their own careers and opinions. She refused to be the typical Hollywood love interest. Her characters were often more successful and intelligent than the men around them. This didn't just annoy male audiences, it made a lot of women uncomfortable too. Many female moviegoers in the 1930s were traditional housewives who had been taught that their role was to support their husbands and raise children. Hepburn's characters suggested there was another way to be a woman, and that threat to the social order made people angry. Her personal life added fuel to the fire. Hepburn was married briefly to a socialite named Ludlow Ogden Smith, but she divorced him in 1934 and kept his last name for a while, which was considered weird. She lived alone, which was almost unheard of for unmarried women in Hollywood. She didn't date publicly or try to find another husband right away. Rumors started spreading about her sexuality. People whispered that she might be a lesbian, which in the 1930s was career-ending scandal material. While these rumors were never proven, and Hepburn later had a famous relationship with Spencer Tracy, the speculation damaged her reputation even more. The press absolutely savaged her. Gossip columnists like Luella Parsons and Hedda Hopper, who basically controlled public opinion in Hollywood, regularly wrote nasty things about Hepburn. They called her difficult, strange, and un-American. Some articles suggested she was a communist sympathizer because of her liberal politics and her parents' progressive views. Hollywood insiders hated working with her too. Directors complained that she was argumentative and wouldn't take direction. Other actors found her cold and unfriendly. She had a reputation for showing up to work, doing her job, and leaving immediately without socializing with cast and crew. The costume department at RKO particularly disliked her because she insisted on wearing pants instead of skirts and dresses. The studio actually had a rule that women couldn't wear pants on set. Hepburn broke this rule constantly, and when they told her to stop, she reportedly said, "Then I won't wear anything at all." The next day, she showed up in her underwear until they gave her pants back. Stories like this made her seem like a prima donna who thought she was above everyone else. Whether these stories were true or exaggerated didn't matter. They became part of her legend, and that legend was toxic. The box office poison label was the final straw. By 1938, RKO was ready to drop her contract. No other major studio wanted to work with her. Her agent was having trouble finding her any roles at all. At 31 years old, Katharine Hepburn's movie career appeared to be over. But here's where the story gets interesting. Instead of disappearing or trying to reinvent herself to please audiences, Hepburn did something incredible. She decided to prove everyone wrong. She bought out her contract from RKO using her own money. Remember, she came from wealth, so she could afford to do this. Most actors couldn't have pulled this off. Then she went back to New York and started looking for a Broadway play that would showcase her talents. She found a script called The Philadelphia Story by Philip Barry. The play was written specifically for her, about a wealthy, independent woman who learns to be more human. It was basically a story about a character very much like Hepburn herself. But here's the genius part. Hepburn didn't just star in the play. She bought the movie rights to it before it even opened on Broadway. She knew that if the play was successful, she could control who made the movie version and who she starred opposite. The Philadelphia Story was a massive hit on Broadway. Audiences loved it. Critics raved about Hepburn's performance. Suddenly, the same qualities that had made people hate her in movies, her sharp intelligence, her independence, her refusal to be traditionally feminine, were being praised as revolutionary and exciting. Hollywood came crawling back. Multiple studios wanted to buy the movie rights, but Hepburn owned them. She was finally in control. She negotiated a deal with MGM that gave her director approval, co-star approval, and a huge salary. She chose George Cukor to direct, and insisted on Cary Grant and James Stewart as her co-stars. The movie version of the Philadelphia Story came out in 1940 and was an enormous hit. It made tons of money, got great reviews, and earned Hepburn an Oscar nomination. Just like that, she went from box office poison to box office gold. But what had really changed? Hepburn was still the same person, independent, intelligent, and unwilling to compromise her principles. The difference was that she had found material that made those qualities seem appealing instead of threatening. Instead of playing characters that seemed to look down on regular people, she played a character who learned to be more relatable while still maintaining her strength. The timing helped too. By 1940, America was changing. Women were starting to enter the workforce in larger numbers because of World War II. The idea of strong, independent women was becoming less scary and more inspiring. Audiences were ready for what Hepburn had been offering all along. Over the next few decades, Hepburn became beloved for exactly the same qualities that had made people hate her in the 1930s. Her independence became inspiring instead of threatening. Her intelligence became admirable instead of intimidating. Her refusal to play traditional feminine roles became groundbreaking instead of annoying. She went on to have an incredible career, winning 3 more Oscars and becoming one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood history. But she never really changed who she was. Society just finally caught up with her. The story of why Katharine Hepburn was once Hollywood's most hated actress tells us a lot about what America was like in the 1930s. It shows how much the country feared strong women, how important it was to fit in and not rock the boat, and how quickly public opinion can change. It also shows something remarkable about Hepburn herself. She could have given up when everyone turned against her. She could have tried to become more conventional, more likable, more what people wanted her to be. Instead, she stuck to her principles and found a way to make the world come around to her point of view. Today, we remember Katharine Hepburn as a trailblazer who paved the way for generations of strong female characters in movies. We celebrate her for refusing to conform, for speaking her mind, and for proving that women could be successful without sacrificing their intelligence or independence. But for several years in the 1930s, those same qualities made her the most hated actress in Hollywood. The woman we now see as ahead of her time was once seen as completely out of touch. The actress we now consider a feminist icon was once considered box office poison. It's a reminder that sometimes being right means being unpopular, and sometimes the qualities that make you great are the same ones that make people want to destroy you. Katharine Hepburn was willing to pay that price, and eventually it paid off in ways she probably never imagined. Her story proves that sometimes the best revenge against people who hate you isn't changing to please them. It's staying exactly who you are until they realize they were wrong all along. And in Hollywood, where conformity and playing it safe usually win, that might be the most rebellious act of all. The next time you watch a movie with a strong, independent female character who doesn't apologize for being smart or ambitious, remember Katharine Hepburn. Remember that someone had to be first, someone had to take the heat, someone had to be called box office poison, so that future generations of actresses could be box office gold. That someone was Katharine Hepburn. And that's why her story of going from Hollywood's most hated actress to one of its most beloved legends is still worth telling today.